This is scheduled for 1 hour, right?
Whatever it takes.
All right.
Just try to like put it closer on the table towards you when it's on the table. Can you put it closer towards you on the table when you lay it down on the table?
All right.
to see people in person.
I feel like the whole thing is swapped.
Are we ready? Okay, good evening, and welcome to the Argyle ISD Trustee Candidate Forum. I'm Bob Weir, and I will be the moderator for tonight's Candidate Forum. I'm here with Max Miller, publisher of the Cross Timbers Gazette. He's around here somewhere. Oh, there he is in the front here. Okay, our local lives here. The Cross Timbers Gazette is Denton County's largest locally owned newspaper, mailed to over 57,000 homes and businesses each month, including every household in the Argyle ISD. Local lives here. You can also read the latest Southern Denton County news online anytime at www.crosstimbersgazette.com, also on Facebook and Twitter. This forum is being live streamed on the Talon, Argyle's High School newspaper's YouTube channel, and will be available for on-demand viewing between now and Election Day. There are 2 contested school board races this year. Place 1 candidates are Craig Hawkesworth, incumbent, and Tori Ryon. Place 2 candidates are Leigh Artho and Nick Reynolds. Place 3 incumbent Sam Slaton is running unopposed. Okay, I would now like to welcome and introduce the school board candidates. We have, as you can see here, Craig Hawkesworth, Tori Ryon, Leigh Artho, and Nick Reynolds. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. After the opening statements, I'll ask the candidates questions submitted by residents. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. We will also allow for an optional 30-second rebuttal. And anyone who wants a rebuttal, please just raise your hand and we can get that in. So finally, there will be 1 minute for closing statements, which will be asked in reversed order. Up front, we have a Boy Scout here named Quinn Kane, who will be our timekeeper. He's from Troop 99. Thank you, Quinn. All right, we'll begin our opening statements. That's a 1 minute opening with Craig Hawthorne.
I don't know who that is. Okay, Hawksworth. Thank you. I guess y'all can hear me.
I'm so sorry.
You're good.
You're right.
You're good. Listen, with a name like that, I've been called a lot of stuff.
Hawksworth, I'm sorry.
I appreciate you guys being here. I know a lot of you, our families have grown up together, our kids have grown up together. My wife and my family have been here for 16 years. 9 of those years I've been on the board. So I like to say that, you know, for all the new people that are here, welcome. We've been waiting on you. We've been planning for you guys to get here. So we've been preparing. The big things that I've been working on while on the school board in that time has been safety and security for our students and staff. I think it's paramount that we provide an environment that our teachers
something like this. I think that's important. Like most of us, I moved here to Argyle in 2017 because of the great schools. You know, you look up and you say, you look up and say, what are the best school districts in Texas, or North Texas rather, and Argyle's at the top of the list, so that's what brought us here. Since I've been here, I've taken every opportunity to be involved in our district, whether it's being a watchdog. I've spent time being a substitute teacher. I've spent time on the high school planning committee, which just concluded a couple of months ago, and currently I reside on the Argyle Education Foundation, which earns money and donates that back to the school district. I'm passionate about this district. I'm passionate about the children here. I have 4 children in this district, and I just feel that with my professional experience managing a budget of over $300 million gives me the ability to help us make important decisions in the future, in the next couple of years, based on the decisions we have to make.
Thank you, Nick Reynolds. We will now begin a question and answer format. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer, and there'll be an optional 30-second rebuttal. Questions will be asked in rotating order. We'll begin with Craig Hawkesworth. All right, the question is, what do you view as the major challenges for the district in the next 5 years?
Wow, I have 1 minute to answer that? So obviously growth is a huge challenge for us. We've averaged 10% growth since 2017. We even had 9% growth in the COVID year. Last year was our biggest year of growth yet, over 14% in growth. So growth is our biggest challenge. Now, there are many things that go along with that. The financing of that growth, the bonds that you guys have elected or passed for us to use to address that growth. There are so many moving parts to this. Determining the best configuration for our campuses, determining what provides the most opportunities for the most students, not just small groups of students, but the most group of students. So, wow, growth is the single biggest thing we're facing right now. And I would say right behind that is the attack on our values from other parts of the world and the state.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkesworth. The same question to Tori Ryon.
So I understand growth is happening right now in Argyle, and it's going to continue to keep happening. I think that the district has done a great job so far trying to plan for the new residents that we're going to have that are coming in. One of the challenges I think that we have as a rural community is we don't have a lot of commercial development, which is great. I mean, 377 is beautiful. We love our land there, but that is difficult to sustain the district without having the commercial revenue for that. So that's one of the challenges that I think we have as a district, that push and pull between wanting to keep it rural but needing that part of the revenue for the district. Another issue I think that we have for the growth is trying to keep the small town feel. And I think the best way to do that would be trying to keep us as one high school and splitting campuses. That would be my ideal situation of keeping us one Argyle. But I understand the board has put forth a plan, and I'm sure there will be another question about that at another time.
Thank you, Tori Ryon. Same question for Leigh and Artho.
So obviously the growth is going to be the biggest issue in the next 5 years. I was looking through our enrollment numbers, and this year we actually exceeded what they thought it was going to be. Our demographer had projected that we would be at 4,922 students. I'm sorry. Yes, for the enrollment for the entire district, and we're actually over 5,000. I think we're at 5,035. So while we were supposed to experience about 14% growth this year, we experienced closer to 16% growth. And looking in the future, if that continues to happen, we're going to have even larger enrollments each year than projected. The most important thing then is going to be to communicate to our community our needs for instructional spaces. We're going to need classrooms, and we're going to need them soon. We're running out of room at the middle school, and we're going to be running out of room at the high school. Regardless of what configuration is chosen for the high schools, we're going to need those spaces. So when bonds come up and we need to vote on them, we're going to need the community to back them up so that the students have places to learn.
Thank you, Leigh and Artho. Same question for Nick Reynolds.
Well, surprise, surprise, growth, like the other three, is the biggest issue that we face in our district. Not only is it growth, but what is our plan to deal with this growth? My kids, all of my children have attended Argyle West, which is one of the elementary schools that has exceeded capacity, and so we have dealt with the growth issue or the planning issue of dealing with that growth firsthand. I think we need to make sure that we have we have a 10-year plan, but we need to have a 2-year plan. We need to have a 1-year plan. We need to have a plan that we can consistently revisit to ensure that we have, like Leanne said, that we have the instructional space for our children, that our teachers do not have too many children in their classrooms, that the student-teacher ratio is not too high. So I think it comes down to a planning issue at this point, and we just have to make sure we stay ahead of it.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to
You have
Ms.
a
Ryan's, right? She
30-second
spoke
rebuttal.
about taxing and lack of commercial tax base, right? It puts the pressure on all of us to handle that growth. We're a unique district. We sit across 5 municipalities. So we have to be involved with those municipalities and having a voice. For instance, development that are happening that is going to have retail, we need to be in those towns telling them we need the retail first. We need retail sooner to take the pressure off the taxpayers.
Any other rebuttals? All right, we'll begin the next question with Tori Ryon. The question is, in a survey sent by the district last year, 84% of families said they want class sizes of 800 or less, and 65% want classes of 600 or less. In your opinion, what class size, if any, is no longer acceptable for the best interest of students in AISD?
Well, that's a great question, one that I've gotten many times. And I don't know that there is a specific number that I can say definitively whether or not it needs to split. What I think is the preferable way to go is the high school planning committee, which was 60 members of our community, well respected, studied this for 6 months, and they found that the best configuration for us was to have a 9th grade center at the 377 campus and 10 through 12 at the Cannon Falls campus. And the data shows that we are sustainable as a one high school town. So I don't know that we need to split at a certain number. We're not going to have all those kids in one building. That's the idea of splitting the campuses. I also think that there's a concern with the current growth plan on how we're going to pay for that. We're capped on our taxes almost. We don't have the commercial revenue, and we're at bonding capacity. So everybody is well aware that the one high school method is going to be significantly more expensive because you have double everything.
Thank you, Tori. Same question for Leanne Artho.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you don't mind repeating it.
Sure. The question is, in a survey sent by the district last year, 84% of families said they want class sizes of 800 or less, and 65% want classes of 600 or less. In your opinion, what class size, if any, is no longer acceptable for the best interests of students in AISD? And that question is now to Leanne Artho.
Well, anyone who's talked to me knows that I agree with the surveys. I believe that smaller classes are better for a variety of reasons. You have more interaction among the students. They know each other better. They are in classes with each other. I have students in high school now where they don't necessarily see their friends in all of their classes. That will only get worse as our class sizes get bigger. When you think about things like prom, homecoming, events that have a capacity limit, it's more fun and it's more engaging when you're with your friends and you know the people that you're with. Graduations, pep rallies, all the things that make up the high school experience, they're all going to be better for our students if they're in smaller classes. I firmly believe this, and I think that the way that the planning committee figured it out is to have additions made to this campus and additions made to the 377 campus, and that will give us flexibility going forward. If enrollment slows, we can split, but if not, I think we should. If we do hit the capacity that we're expected to, I think we need to split.
Thank you, Leanne. And, same question for Nick Reynolds.
I think it's important to understand that graduating class size and classroom student-teacher ratios are not equal. You can have 200 kids graduate out of high school, well, your student-teacher ratio is effectively going to be relatively the same. I do believe that the survey that came out that did say this, I think it was interesting because I don't think people really understood that what the reality versus what their expectation can be. But I think it's really important to understand that you can still have a great student experience, and you actually will have more experiences if you have a larger graduating class size, because it will afford you more extracurricular activities. It will afford you more courses and those sorts of things. So to answer the question, I don't know that there's an exact number where you say cut off and split. I think you just have to figure out what's best as you go.
Thank you. Nick, same question for Craig Hawkesworth.
Yeah, I'm a two high school person. I think that I'm about providing the most opportunities for the most students, period. So if that's 600, if that's 500, that's why I was asking. I thought the survey said 83% preferred 500 or less, but you mentioned 800. So I'm definitely 600 or less. And in fact, the plan does call for a 9th grade center and a 10-12 campus until we reach an enrollment of 2,700. Then we would start moving and transitioning into 2 high schools. By the way, those 2 high schools would both be larger than this high school we have today. We have 1,450 students in this high school today. This high school would go to 2,250, that's 800 more students, and then we would go to 1,750 at the current middle school campus. People love to talk about cost. They love to talk about the Little Elm example. It's apples and oranges. Little Elm doesn't own the land. They don't have an existing high school facility that's functioning. We do. It's a much different discussion. The cost, are there more costs? There are. But the reality of it is the same number of people you're going to have to hire to run 2 schools. When this is a 4,000 kid campus, you're going to have to hire a ton more people to make this function.
Thank you, Craig.
As well.
I have a rebuttal.
Do you have a rebuttal, please?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Is it my
Just
turn?
go online. That's fine. Just go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Wow, all excited. Mr. Hawksworth mentioned more opportunities at 2 high schools, and I have to disagree with that. First, I don't know what more opportunities means. If we have to start cutting programs because we don't have the money to fund it,
What are we going to cut?
I'm in the middle of my argument, sir. We're not going to have the ability to pay for the opportunities that we currently have that will strap us. In addition, with a 1 high school model, we can have an A team, a B team, a C team. So athletics-wise, we're going to have more opportunity there, and we're going to have the money to pay for the extra stuff like the choir trips and the
Thank
fun.
you.
Thank you.
Another rebuttal?
In regard to Nick saying that the student-to-teacher ratio would be the same, I'm talking about class sizes and knowing people that you're walking by in the hallways. This growth is going to be happening exponentially, so new students are going to be coming in every year. They're not going to have that chance to have been here since kindergarten and have connections. Teachers aren't going to know them in the hallway. In regard to him saying that we would have more opportunities, Capel High School is about 3,900 students. We're going to be about 3,900 students. If you look up what they offer for athletics,
Okay.
it's the same, except they have diving.
Thank you. Any other rebuttal?
I've
Please.
kind of got 2 here.
Go ahead.
In regards to Capel, you are correct as far as sports go, but they also do offer 70 other extracurricular activities that are outside of athletics. And then as far as, Mr. Hawksworth, you saying that, you're a 2 high school guy, is there information that is out there that you have that can refute what the high school planning committee came up with and said that undeniably in every single lens that we looked through, and I was on the committee, undeniably the 1 high school model came out above.
Thank you.
And I just want to know, is there information that could be released in the
Thank you,
future?
Nick.
I don't know.
That's the time-
I'm just
time
curious.
expired.
Rebuttal now, right?
I'm sorry, what?
It's my rebuttal now, right?
You want another rebuttal? Go
I
ahead.
didn't have a rebuttal yet.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
And then I get a rebuttal on your rebuttal.
I forget how
sorry.
many there were.
So, yes, I did talk to Executive Director of TASB, who was the principal at Allen High School. He then went on to be superintendent at 2 districts that became high schools. So he did tell me there are definitely more opportunities. You can say that we're going to have cut programs. We'll have more programs at both schools than we have today because the school's going to be bigger. In terms of, you brought up athletics, think about the number of teams we have today, right? You're going to have 2 schools. It's a math question. It's times 2. You'll have twice the number of opportunities.
Twice the amount of costs as well. Do I get a rebuttal to the rebuttal?
Well,
We'll just have a bunch of rebuttals.
Yes.
well.
This is a hot topic.
I think
Yeah.
We have a
better
lot
go-
to say about this topic.
I know, we should go on to that. We have a lot of questions here to get to.
Okay.
so
All right.
Everybody should get one rebuttal if you like.
That's fair.
That's
fair.
All right. For the next question, we begin with Leigh Artho. And the question is, what unique strategies do you feel AISD could utilize in recruitment and retention of teachers and staff?
Well, it's interesting. I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of the administrators here, and they actually do a really good job of trying to recruit. Some of the ways they do that is through connections with local universities and state universities. They also do referrals from teachers within and finding the best teachers at other campuses to recruit. I think some of the other ways we can do that is maintaining an environment that is desirable for teachers to come to. We've always been a destination district, someplace that teachers want to teach, and I think that's through our parent involvement and support of our teachers and staff, and I think that those strategies together would work well to maintain and retain and keep, I'm just going to tell y'all, this is so outside of my comfort zone. It is not what I do. I am a mom, and I really love our district, or I would not be willing to do this. I think that we just keep doing the things that we do well and recruiting the teachers. We've done a great job, and I think that Dr. Wright does a good job doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Leigh Nick Reynolds, your response, please.
Actually, I agree quite a bit with what Leigh says. I think it starts with the referral program here. It starts with reaching out to our local universities. It starts with doing those sorts of things, reaching out to, hey, come here and be a substitute teacher while you're in college, and we should be paying our substitutes a little bit more. We should be paying our teachers a little bit more to retain them and to give them that sense of security that hey, you're here, we appreciate you, that this is what we think of you. I think that it also starts with, like you alluded to, Dr. Wright has done a great job of cascading down support to each one of the schools and allowing each school administrator to manage their school and to give them the ability to teach the way that they can and to be the best teacher that they can. And I think that's where it starts.
Thank you, Nick. Craig Hawkesworth, your response, please.
Yeah, I agree. I think working with local universities, right? We have a lot of them around here. That's great. I think one of the most impressive ways and the most successful ways we've secured great talent is from the teachers that we have here. We have incredibly talented staff. They get here. I think they love it. Our administrators, our campus administrators, our principals, they do a great job. They run a great campus, and I think the teachers appreciate that. So word of mouth is a great attractor for us. I will tell you, though, Mr. Reynolds asked me a minute ago about did I have any information. When I mentioned I spoke with the executive director of TASB, who was the principal at Allen when they made the decision to go to one massive high school, he told me the unforeseen circumstance or the unforeseen situation that came up was they lost 30% of their teachers the next year. They all went to Frisco because Frisco had announced a model of multiple high schools that when they reach a certain number, they're opening another one. I don't even know how many they have now, but that was an unforeseen thought they weren't aware of. They lost 30% of their teachers the very next year.
Thank you, Craig.
Can I have
She gets to
Well, there's
finish
still one
first.
question.
That's all right.
Tori Ryon, your response, please.
Well, I think we absolutely need to focus on our teachers and support them in any way that we can to give them an exceptional environment to teach in. We need to keep the pay competitive, which I think we are with the surrounding districts, but it would never hurt to give them more. I think they're overworked and underpaid across the United States. That's why we have a shortage, right? I think that we need to make sure that they're getting the opportunity to provide individualized instruction to their kids, making sure that they have the materials that they need, communicating with them, not making them work outside their contract hours, providing them with opportunities to collaborate with one another during already set aside times for them to meet. not giving them extra meetings. That's not at all what I mean, but allowing them to communicate about ideas, because our teachers are the ones who know and are supposed to be teaching our children, and we need to support them however we can. We need to keep them here, and the best way to do that, I think, is keeping us a one high school town.
Thank you. Tori, any rebuttals? Yes, please.
I just want to ask, Craig, you've mentioned Allen ISD a couple of times. Is it safe to say that we're not going to be anywhere close to the size of Allen ISD?
I know there will be 4,000 kids if the demographer's projections are correct.
And I think
That'll be
Allen ISD,
larger than any high school around us today.
and I think Allen ISD is a little over.
Byron Nelson.
I think
larger
Allen
than the
ISD is a little
Dyers,
over 6,000,
all of those.
right?
Back then, when they made that decision, they were
I'm
6,000.
just,
All right,
no, I'm
folks.
just going based on that. I was just.
Could
I'm-
we
I was
could we
asking.
just have a 30-second rebuttal, and you finish, and then anyone else wants a rebuttal,
Oh, I thought
please?
you asked me a question, sorry.
Yeah, well, anyone else with a rebuttal? All right, let's go on to the next question, and we begin with Nick Reynolds. The question is, given Argyle ISD's financial situation, what cost-cutting measures are you willing to put in place to ensure AISD can both meet its obligations and provide for a growing student population?
There's no shying away that right now in a district like ours, we're growing very rapidly, so it's very hard to keep up with the financial part of it. I want to start off by saying I think Mrs. Stewart does a fantastic job, and she's leading our district very, very well, so I appreciate all that you've done. First of all, I want to say that I would never compromise on safety and security of our students. That would be the absolute last thing that I would compromise on. But if it does come down to cost-cutting measures, I think you have to start looking at classroom and extracurriculars that are not meeting capacity. So, you know, if you maybe have an elective class that doesn't exceed or doesn't hit a certain number of students, you would have to cut that class, and then you would have to reallocate that teacher to teach another class. And then after that, you know, it would be a trickle-down effect from there, but I think that's where we would really have to start.
Thank you, Nick. Craig Hawkesworth, your response.
There are definitely a handful of people that have made a point that they think the district's going bankrupt. And one of the things I like to point to is the approval of the deficit budget this year, right? I think you've seen that the approval of that deficit budget in an inflationary market was because the board and the district administration made it a point. We just talked about teachers, to make sure teachers got a pay raise, and we hired more officers. Those things led us that direction. So we were, at the highest point, we were at about $1.3 million in a deficit budget. As of a few days ago, we're at $200,000 in a deficit budget, right? So as Nick said, our CFO is amazing. This isn't the first deficit budget we've approved, by the way. And so she is constantly working. She's very conservative in how she budgets for us. She's had a 19-year in a row superior rating from the TEA, 10 plus years of no issues from a third-party auditor. Our finances are strong.
Thank you, Craig. Tori Ryon, your response?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
Thanks.
Given Argyle ISD's financial situation, what cost-cutting measures are you willing to put in place to ensure AISD can both meet its obligations and provide for a growing student population?
Well, I think any school district needs to try to maintain a balanced budget, which we are currently trying to do, but we're struggling a little bit with that, and that's because of the factors I stated earlier. Our taxes are almost capped, we don't have the commercial revenue, and we don't have the bonding capacity right now. So we're working really hard to get a balanced budget, but it's very clear that, and we do have enough in our reserves, which is another goal that the school district wants to have. But the data shows that having 2 high schools is more expensive, and that makes sense because you're going to have 2 principals, you're going to have 2 vice principals, 2 band directors, and so on and so forth. So to say that it would be fiscally responsible to move forward with a 2 high school plan when we are sustainable as a 1 high school town is frankly not financially or fiscally responsible. If we can't pay for it, then we need to change the plan.
Thank you, Tori. Same question to Leigh and Artho.
Well, I agree with what Craig said. I don't think we're in a dire financial situation. I think that Liz has done a great job balancing the budget. Many of you may not know that the deficit has been made up not by making cuts to our budget, but by unexpected revenues from higher interest revenues, pre-K tuition, and, sorry. And I think, and from ticket sales and the use of our facilities. I think some of the best ways to increase revenue going forward is to maximize the revenues from our facilities usage by charging coaches and different people that use our facilities for training. And look, to Tori's point, we do keep a 3-month reserve, and we're only required to keep 2, and we've been able to keep up with that even as our costs have gone up. So I would look towards maximizing our revenues in the future and not making cuts.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I have.
Anybody have rebuttal, please?
Ms. Ryan mentioned that there's more costs associated with, she said in 2 high schools you have more band directors, or 2 band directors, excuse me, more coaches, more teachers. That's true. But it also is true in a single large high school. We have to hire more assistant band directors, more teachers, more coaches, because the coaches in that size of school don't teach classes. So I agree, there are more costs, but those costs are similar in a 1 large high school or 2 small high schools. Not small, medium size.
I have a rebuttal.
Please.
The data that was collected and presented to the high school advisory committee by our administration, these were not anybody else, it was our administration who had run the numbers, shows that operating 2 high schools from an M&O standpoint, maintenance and operation, and a daily and constructing it are both significantly more expensive. If we are operating, we're already operating at a deficit having 1 high school. When we split into 2, which Mr. Hawkesworth agreed will be more expensive, what will our deficit be at that point? That's what concerns me.
Thank you. Any other rebuttals? Please.
So when you look at running 2 schools and it being more expensive, the costs given were based on instructional spaces, and that will be the same whether you add 1,100 classrooms here, 500 here, 600 at 377. What wasn't factored into the cost, I reached out to Rick Heron to check on this. They didn't factor in any modifications that have to be made to this space, to the auditoriums, to the cafeterias. Those will all need to be updated. So the numbers given were basic numbers. Sorry, I'm out of
Okay.
time.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got one.
Okay, please.
The question was specifically, what would you do what would you be willing to cut? I never said that I would cut personnel or I would cut staff or anything like that, but also it's a hard pill to swallow knowing that we're currently in a deficit, which is understandable, but we choose the option that's $30 million more expensive and costs us almost $1.5 million more dollars every year to operate. And I just want to know, and this has not been answered, how are we going to pay for it?
All right. For the next question, we begin with Craig Hawkesworth. The question is, how will you help ensure the district places safety and security as its highest priority?
Well, as I said in my opening statement, I definitely believe safety and security is paramount. Our students need to feel safe in order to learn. Our teachers need to feel safe in order to teach them. And our communities, their parents need to feel safe in dropping their kids off at school. So it's got to be a focus for us. And I think if you can see that it was a focus for the district during this last budgeting session, because we agreed to hire more officers to make sure that the campuses were covered, all the campuses were covered, and it led to a portion of at least that deficit budget. So I think it is very important to the district. It will remain important to the district. It's important to every parent out here. I think this is a topic we can all agree upon, that safety and security is paramount in this district.
Thank you, Craig. Same question for Tori Ryon.
Well, safety and security is hands down the #1 concern for all parents, right? We want to send our kids off to school on the bus and see them get off the bus safely. So the district is being entrusted with the most precious people in the world. And so I think we have and we should continue to provide every single measure possible to protect our kids. We need to take a layered approach to it, which we do, having on-site visible officers that are armed, teachers that are armed, that are trained on it, the equipment. There's several different pieces to the safety and security aspect. So we're dealing with much different and scarier times than we were back when we were kids. That's all we had to worry about were ducking for tornadoes, and now we have a lot scarier things to address. But another part of that's the physical safety aspect of it. We also have to look at the mental safety and security of our students and make sure that they are in a good place mentally, that they like where they go to school, that they're fitting in, that they have activities to do. So there's many aspects of the safety and security part of it, and it will be a top priority for me.
Thank you, Tori. Same question for Leigh Artho.
I think we all agree that safety and security is important. It was one of the things that my husband pointed out when he was on the high school planning committee, that was not one of the lenses that they looked at when determining the configuration of the high schools. So we don't really have a comparison as to the safety numbers that would come with a big school versus a small school. I think our district has done an excellent job in providing security measures at our school. They have layered things like Tori said. What I would look to strengthen is our cyber safety and our data security standards as we go forward. As everything is moving more online and technology is being used more and more by our students, I think as a school district, we have to ensure that our kids' privacy is secure and that our children are not at risk while they're online.
Thank you, Leigh. Same question for Nick Reynolds.
Well, kind of like the other three said, safety is paramount. And I think one of the most incredible things about Argyle is that Argyle ISD takes our students' safety and security as top priority. I think it starts with, and be very complimentary, I think our school board, our superintendent has done a great job of hiring the right people, for instance, Chief Collins, of hiring the right people to do the right job and to train the right people, making sure that we have an officer at every one of our campuses at the entrance when you come in. It's absolutely amazing. Much to like what Leigh said, we've got the physical part, I think, is makes us feel good and makes us feel safe, but there's a cybersecurity part that we just have to make sure that us as parents and us as teachers and staff, that we're prudent in making sure that we're protecting our children from every single angle.
Thank you. Any rebuttals?
Can I just add, I don't want to rebut. I just want to make a statement. They all talked about mental health. I think that's really important. And the district a few years ago hired Dr. Hagan, who's a crisis coordinator, to really help our staff identify kids that are struggling. And so I think they're all correct. We can talk about the physical aspect, but the mental aspect is just as important. And I wanted to make sure that we recognize Chief Collins. We did. We want to make sure we recognize Dr. Hagan as well, because he does a lot of good work with the campus and the students.
Thank you. All right, for the next question, we begin with Tori Ryon. And the question is, parental involvement is an important part of any child's education. Where do you stand on parents' rights as it relates to school choice and vouchers currently being discussed in the Texas legislature?
Wow, okay, great question. Great question that I was not expecting. So school choice and school vouchers are not something that's in the purview of the school board. That is a legislative decision that's being done in Austin. So I don't know that we have much control, no matter how we feel about it. What I do know about it is that it's a little bit scary. I think it's going to take away funds from public schools that we desperately need. So I'm concerned about it. It's on my radar, but from a school board member's trustee standpoint, can't do much about it. I think the other part was maybe about privacy and parental involvement. I think that parents absolutely need to be as involved as they can with their children in school. They need to be aware of what they're being taught as far as curriculum. We need to know, we need to have transparency with what information is going into the classrooms, which is a lot harder now that we have Chromebooks and technology. We don't get to just flip through their textbooks anymore. So parents definitely need to be involved as much as possible.
Thank you, Tori. Same question for Leigh Artho.
Parent involvement is a necessity in education. We are the primary educators of our children. We should know what's going on. I think Argyle does an amazing job. We're invited into the classrooms. We're invited into the buildings. We're allowed to be involved in our children's education every step of the way, and I think it's very important. As far as the decisions being made at the state, I personally do not think that school choice with vouchers is a good choice for Texas, especially for, if you look at Argyle ISD, we have Liberty Christian, and I think that makes it all the more important for Argyle to maintain a culture that is desirable for families, so that people want to keep their children within our schools when when they could possibly have other choices.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you. Same question for Nick Reynolds.
Well, much like the other two said, I think one of the things that makes Argyle so special is that there are so many parents that are willing to be involved in their children, you know, whether it's in school, whether it is at home with their homework, being involved in any kind of extracurricular. I think that's one of the things that makes it special. Much like the other two said, personally, I'm not a fan of school vouchers or school choice. I think that could effectively bankrupt a lot of districts. I don't think that that's a wise choice. I think the money should be kept here in our district, because I just think that, you know, us as taxpayers, this is something that we should be allowed to, you know, something that I guess what I'm saying is I guess the fund should stay here. That's it.
Thank you, Nick. Same question for Craig Hawkesworth.
I think people alluded to it, that parent involvement in Argyle ISD hasn't been a challenge. Since I've been here, if there was a sign up for something to do at Hilltop, if you didn't sign up in the first 5 minutes, you didn't get a spot. So parents are involved here. I would encourage every parent I talk to, I still encourage them, be involved. If if you don't hold your teacher accountable for educating your child, then you don't have a leg to stand on, right? The administrators, the teachers are all in alignment here. They want to provide the best education for these children. That's what makes Argyle unique. Nick talked about it, whether it's athletics, whether it's extracurricular, whether it's band, and most importantly, the education of our children, right? We need to make sure we're aligned with our community values. Vouchers, not a fan. Nick said it. It's going to put a lot of districts out of business. So, not a fan. Parental involvement, I am a fan. Keep doing it. Keep being involved. Hold us all accountable.
Thank you, Craig. We'll go to the next question, and we begin with Leanne Artho. The question is, would you be an advocate of school funding based on enrollment? If so, why?
Yes, I do think that we should do our allotments based on enrollment. Texas is one of only 4 states that still does it based on attendance. Attendance policies are a result of this. So you have at the high school level, for instance, in order to be exempt from your exams, you have to attend your classes, and you can only miss 2 times. So this encourages children to attend school when they're sick, putting everyone at risk. I also think that at the state level, we should do things like the basic daily allotment should be raised. It has not been raised since our overall M&O budgets for school districts has not been raised since 2014, but the budget of the TEA has increased by $400 million in that time. So a lot of the money that's going to recapture is actually going to the TEA rather than back to our schools. So I think with all of the surplus, we should do an allotment based on attendance and also increase the basic allotment to meet inflation rates.
Thank you, Leanne. Same question for Nick Reynolds.
Would you mind repeating the question? I just want to make sure I got it right.
Sure. Would you be an advocate of school funding based on enrollment? If so, why?
I would be an advocate of that, because each student that goes there, I guess the homeowner, the taxpayer pays taxes to that, and it should not be based on the amount of days they go there. Much like Leanne said, you know, are we going to force a kid to go to school because he's sick or because he's injured or, you know, some other reason? I think it should be completely based on the enrollment numbers, because effectively, you know, that's the number of kids here based on the amount of days they go to school.
Thank you, Nick. Same question for Craig Hawkesworth.
Yes, I'd be in favor of funding based on enrollment versus attendance. I think Leanne alluded to it, that the TEA, the money they're taking in, they're not equally distributing that money. The state constantly, every 2 years in a legislative session, is changing the funding requirements for school districts and how those funds are going to be determined. We talked earlier about finance and budgeting challenges. It's something we didn't get into, but if you think about having to budget for something, you build your budget, and then the state comes to you 4 months into your budget and says, hey, by the way, that $1 million you thought you were going to get, we're going to take it away from you. And they do it all the time. So school finance is one of the most confusing, hardest things for anybody to figure out. So I go back to giving Liz, or Ms. Stewart, excuse me, credit. But funding, one of the simplest things would be changing funding based on enrollment versus attendance.
Thank you, Craig. Same question for Tori Ryon.
Well, I tend to agree with the rest of these three smart guys. I think from a financial aspect, it makes sense to change it to daily allotment. I also think that from a totally different standpoint, the enrollment basis for funding puts more pressure on parents. So whenever I'm trying to get my kids to the doctor or get them there before they take attendance at 9 o'clock, it's just another thing that we have to deal with as moms, you know, trying to get the kids there. So I would have no objection to changing it to an allotment instead of an enrollment funding. And it sounds like that would be preferable for us as a district.
Thank you, Tori. For the next question, we begin with Dick Reynolds. The question is, what do you consider best for the future of Argyle ISD, long-term or short-term bond planning?
You repeat the question one more time?
Sure. What do you consider best for the future of Argyle ISD, long-term or short-term bond planning?
Ultimately, I think the best option for our district going forward is to stay one high school, and that's financially responsible. I think it's responsible for our children. It's responsible for our taxpayers. Effectively, the bonds that will be required will be lower. So ultimately, I think, you know, going the route of one high school would be the best option, because effectively it's the least expensive option that we reviewed on the high school planning committee. And you know, that's really just how I feel about it. I've had a hard time justifying how we can choose an option that costs us, you know, upwards of $30 million more a year and an extra up to $1.5 million annually. I just don't think that that's fiscally or financially responsible.
Thank you, Nick. Same question for Craig Hawkesworth.
I'm sorry, but I may have misunderstood the question. Can you?
Sure. What do you consider best for the future of Argyle ISD, long-term or short-term bond planning?
Okay. I think it's long-term bond planning. So no matter the high school configuration, as Leanne said earlier, you're going to have to add classroom space, whether it's here at one campus or somewhere else. So definitely long-term bond planning is in the best advantage and in the best interest of the district and the taxpayers, right? Because we have a plan in place. It shows you when these are coming. We can talk, Mr. Ryan talked about bond capacity, right? And so that allows us to look at all that. The longer we can plan it out. I will tell you, in the past few bonds that we've done, you know, we come back, we did it in 14, we then did them again in 17, we then did it again in 22. So we're coming back, we're being very financial or fiscally responsible with those bonds, and we're finding ways to save money during those bonds and bring projects forward. But I would like us to start thinking farther out for longer term bond planning.
Thank you, Craig. Same question, Tori Ryon.
Well, I think it's evident that we're going to need bonds in the future, no matter which configuration we go with, as Mr. Hawkesworth said. So I agree to that extent. But I think in terms of planning for bonding, we're going to have to look at the INS, the interest in sinking funds, and see what our capacity is for bonding. Right now, we are almost at capacity. So at that, I don't have enough information right now to say whether or not we can't start planning for a bond right this moment. We do know we will need them, and we'll have a bond committee that will put those together, and people that are good with numbers will provide that information for us. But I don't think that a bond would pass currently based on the 10-year plan, because I don't think that there's enough data to support the costs for the plan. Either way, we will need a bond. If you want to call that long-term or short-term planning, I would leave that up to the professionals.
Thank you, Tori. Same question for Leanne Artho.
Well, to allude to what Craig said, we do have a long-term plan now. We have proposed bonds through 29, just among the school board that will include 7 elementaries, 2 middle schools, and then the high school configuration. When you look at the high school configuration, the thing that is attractive to me about it is that you would do the building in phases. So if you put the 2 phases, like for instance, the 500 classrooms added here and the 600 classrooms added at Canyon Falls, if you put them on a separate item on the bond, you can sell one of the bonds and add the classrooms here. And if our enrollment starts to slow down due to an economic downturn, we're not going to be stuck paying for the bonds for the entire build out. So we would have only built out 500 seats, and if our enrollment doesn't hit the numbers that we thought, then we will not be paying long-term for 1,100 seats. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you, Leanne. For the next question, we begin with Craig Hawkesworth. The question is, do you support bans of certain books or teaching materials? If so, what criteria would you use to determine what to ban?
So I absolutely believe that we should have input. We talked about parent involvement. There should be parent involvement. Banning is a word that the attorneys at the district don't like us to use. But I think there are ways to strengthen our policies around those topics. And in fact, I've been working with other districts in the North Texas area. I've been working with other organizations who are looking at our policies and find ways to strengthen those policies around library books, around content in classrooms that don't align with our community values. So again, I think banning is a strong word, but I think in many cases, that's what it calls for.
Thank you, Craig. Same question for Tori Ryon.
Sorry.
That's okay. So that is a very loaded and hot topic right now, and I'll do my best to answer it. I definitely think that we need to monitor the content of books that are being provided to our elementary students all the way up to our high school students. We need to be able to see as parents what our children are reading. And right now, currently at the high school, I don't believe that we're able to click on the library link to the high school library and access that. So I think that's one thing that I would try to work on, is more transparency as far as what books our kids are reading, what content they're seeing. As Craig said, banning books is a very strong word. It's a very heated topic, but I absolutely support monitoring, making sure that it's appropriate content for our kids and that we are not indoctrinating them with unnecessary information that's too much for their little minds to handle.
Thank you, Tori. Same question for Leanne Artho.
So I actually brought this question to Dr. Stieber, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction at our district. And she informed me that for senior level classes or upper level classes where students have book choices, they're all put online so parents can look at those. It is our responsibility to know what our kids are going to be reading. There are websites now where you can check to see if that specific book meets the standards for your family. And she said that she makes sure that each book list has a book that no matter what your family belief is, it would be a book that would be okay in every home in the district. I agree with Craig that there are ways to strengthen our policies without attracting any lawsuits to our district. But I think in the classroom, what we want to do is focus on foundational learning, and anything that's outside of the purview of that, we should have it maybe in-house instead of using third-party vendors. And I think a really effective way to let parents know what's happening is to do opt-in for those types of things instead of opting out.
Thank you. Same question for Nick Reynolds, please.
Well, much like the other one said, or the other said, I'm sorry, banning is a pretty strong word. However, we have to be prudent in what we're allowing our children to read or experience. I don't think that, I think anything explicit that we would consider as a community explicit, probably should, kind of going back to what you were saying, it goes back to parent involvement. We have, I talked to Dr. Wright, and she said that any book or any reading list that our children have, there's an alternate assignment for it. There's an alternate book that they can read. So I think that's important. But I think it comes down to parent involvement, and we should be able to have access to everything that they have availability to.
Thank you, Nick. For the next question, we begin with Tori Ryon, and the question is, are you in agreement with the district's 10-year strategic growth plan to split the high school? Do you favor a 1 or 2 high school model, and why?
Well, I think I've made that pretty clear already, but I'm happy to answer it again. I would love the opportunity to work with the board to see what steps that we can take. Well, let me back up. I am happy that they are taking the steps to plan for the growth. I think we need to stay ahead of it, not behind it. Right now, it doesn't really make sense to me, the current plan. There might be more information that I don't know, but from what I do know, the data shows that we are sustainable as a 1 high school town. And I think regardless of your opinions on opportunities, there's arguments both ways there, but the class size in the classroom is not going to change. So that's mandated by the state. I think that's a common misconception. And we're not going to have 5,000 kids in one building. That's also a common misconception. But the problem that I have with the current plan is it doesn't appear we can afford it. We're operating at a deficit. We're almost capped on taxes. We have little to no commercial revenue, and it's undeniable that is going to be more expensive to operate 2 high schools. That is my concern for the 10-year plan. I think we need to revisit it as is allowed by every 6 months. And
Thank you, Tori.
Thank you.
Thank you. Same question for Leigh and Artho.
I agree with the 10-year plan. I'm pro 2 high schools. I think smaller class sizes are better. There are more opportunities. You'll have 2 valedictorians, 2 salutatorians, 2 UIL academic teams for everything. You'll have two basketball teams, 2 football teams. The list goes on and on. You'll have 2 class presidents. The actual opportunities for our students are more. We could win 2 Lone Star Cups in the same year. It could be great, right? I look at it and I see the positive. I think that not having to shuttle our students back and forth is a positive. I think that having more intimate classrooms, more intimate hallways where people know each other, know their counselors, have been on the same campus with their counselor for 4 years, I think that's important. I think that looking at our district and looking at the growth and the road construction, there will be 3,000 students at this campus. I want you to picture the traffic. If you have been in this parking lot after school, you know that you don't want another 1,400, 1,100 kids driving here.
Thank you, Leanne. Same question for Nick Reynolds.
If I just say no, is that enough, or should I expand? I'm just kidding. So I had a unique perspective of being on the high school advisory planning committee, and we spent a lot of our personal time digging through a bunch of lenses on what was going to be best for this district. I was fortunate enough to sit at a table and shared a table with people that had all different viewpoints. And at the end of this session, I think it was 4 or 5 months or so, almost everybody at our table realized that 1 high school in some way, shape, or form was going to be the best option. Whether it's financially, whether it's academically, that it was the best way to go forward. I could get behind the 2 high school split if I could have some sort of justification on why that was chosen. There still has been no reason on why that option was chosen. How can we choose an option that costs $30 million more than the other one and costs us almost $1.5 million more per year? If I could get that reasoning, then I would be much more
Thank
behind
you.
that. I'm sorry.
Can I have a quick
Thank you,
rebuttal?
Nick.
Really quick?
Wait, he hasn't answered
Oh,
yet.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
The
interrupt
same
you.
question for
I
Craig
got so excited.
Hawkesworth.
You go. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're not rebutting me, I'm glad, I guess. Obviously, as Tori said, I support the strategic goal. She didn't say that. She said, anyway, we've already said, right? I do support the strategic growth plan. I've committed to those I've talked to that I'm definitely willing and open to follow the data and the research. I already got 15 seconds. So I'm definitely open to continuing the discussion, but as it stands today with the information and the data I have, I support 2 high schools. To me, at the end of the day, it's the most opportunity for the most students. That's my opinion. That's what the data tells me. And so that's what I'm looking at.
Thank you, Craig. Rebuttals?
Yeah,
I think you were first.
Well, what is that data? Because I was part of the high school planning committee, and I want to know what
Okay.
that data is.
So I'm happy to,
I don't think
Yeah.
y'all are supposed to ask each other
Okay.
questions,
Oh, sorry.
actually, because it's not a
let's
debate,
just-
but
Rhetorical, I
Yeah.
guess maybe it was more
Sure,
rhetorical.
I
Sorry.
understand,
I'll let you
but
moderate.
just take 30 seconds for your rebuttal and then the next one, all right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Please.
One thing I wanted to provide you some information on is the latest niche, I think that's how you say it, study, is that the #1 school, high school in Texas is Eads. I think I'm saying that wrong, but it's EADES, and it is near Westlake. It is the #1 high school in Texas. It has 8,000 students, and it is exactly like us for demography and that's a new word, geographically. So that is a study right there that shows us that we can operate, we're not gonna be at 8,000.
Another rebuttal, please.
We're actually going to be at 12,000. So Eads has 8,000 total in their district, and it's 2,900 in their high school. Just for clarification, and the data that he wanted is on the new FAQs about the strategic plan online. The decision was made based on giving students more opportunities to the most students, and also retaining what Argyle has been known for, which is a smaller high school in our area. If we become one high school, we will be the largest high school in our area. We'll be bigger than Flower Mound, Marcus, all of them.
I just want to say one last thing. And I'm sure most people feel this way, when I looked up the best school districts in Texas, I Googled the best school district in North Texas, not the smallest school district in North Texas.
All right.
so it's my turn, right? So you asked me the question about what is that data, I believe, or?
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
And so I think the question that I would ask mostly is, as a board member and you were on the committee, we all got sent the presentations the night before they were given to the high school committee the next day, right? So the last one that you keep talking about, this $30 million more, if you notice, if you look at the one you got on Friday night versus or not Friday night, the night before,
I know what you're saying.
right? Versus the one you got the next day, there was a $20 million difference overnight. I agree with you. That's the question I'd be asking.
Odd to me.
That's the question I'd be asking.
Underestimated.
Can we, all right. I think everyone had a rebuttal.
But that's the question I would be asking.
We can keep this going online,
Okay.
in case you
Better
didn't.
cut us off.
All right, for the next question, we begin with Leigh and Artho, and the question is, as our district faces rapid growth, and once we begin the transition to separating the high schools, what are your suggestions for keeping the community spirit and forming friendly relationships / rivalries?
Well, that's going to be up to the parents. In every situation, I've talked to people that were at Grapevine Colleyville when it split. I talked to people that were at Marcus Flower Mound when it split. They were students, they were fine. It was the parents that made it difficult. We will not split overnight. It will not be, this is a 9 through 12, this is a 9 through 12. It will be a gradual pulling the 9th graders out, then pulling the 10th graders out, then pulling the 11th graders out. It's not going to be an overnight cut. They're not going to do that to our children. If we get to a point where we're not growing and it works to operate as a 9-10 campus and 11-12 campus, great. No one moved here for a 2 high school town. They didn't. We all moved here to be one Argyle, one town, one high school. But looking to the future, it's just not feasible. It's not going to feel the same. Studies show that as schools get bigger, parent involvement goes down. We've already seen it. But ultimately, it is up to every person in this room as parents to go forward and make our children's education the best it can be.
Thank you, Leigh. And Nick Reynolds?
I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, is how do you not have a divided town whenever you've got one high school that's smaller than the other one? One's going to have more funding than the other one. One, in theory, is going to have athletic programs and academic programs and band programs that are going to be better than the other one. I do agree with you. I do believe it does start at home, and it starts there. But ultimately, a kid that's not going to be offered an opportunity at the smaller high school because there's just not enough kids interested in, let's just say, the guitar club, but the other school has guitar club. well, that's just going to create some sort of, dissension between those kids. I think that's inevitable. So to answer the question, I'm not really sure how you avoid that. And if you have talked with people that have been in Grapevine, Colleyville, I'm friends with somebody that their parent was on the school board when they divided, and they said the town was never the same.
All right, thank you. Nick, same question for Craig Hawkesworth.
Doing that, I'm sorry. Sorry, it's
Obviously, it'll be a challenge, right? Dividing two high schools will be a challenge, but I got a lot of the similar answers and feedback from people that I spoke with that Leanne mentioned, which was the students were really okay with it. It was more so the parents that had a problem or a challenge with it. So I think it is incumbent upon the parents. We've been talking about parent involvement in different ways. This aligns with it as well. The positive attitude of parents will be expressed to their kids, or it won't be. It's one or the other, but it starts at home. And so I agree. It won't be easy, but it's doable. We'll get through it. The parents will be the key people to make this be an easier transition.
Thank you, Craig. Tori Ryon, your response?
So I have to disagree with Leanne on the neighboring towns not being divisive. I went to college with a lot of people from Flower Mound, Marcus, Grapevine, Colleyville, and they did not get along. I think that it is going to cause a huge divide in the town. The biggest game of the night is going to be the ones where we're playing each other. You see it right now in AYFA. Whenever my son plays, his friends on the other team, there's tears at the end. Granted, they're little, but I do agree parents can have a good attitude about it all day long, but I went to a divided town. I went to a divided high school town. I went to Canyon High School in New Braunfels, Texas. There was the New Braunfels Unicorns and the Canyon Cougars. And we didn't really hang out with each other. We lived on different parts of the town. We were very competitive with one another. It was a very divisive feeling. And I would also question Leanne on what data shows that a one high school town for us is not feasible, because I haven't seen any data that supports that statement.
Thank you, Tori. Okay, we only have about 17 questions left, so.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
No, I'm only kidding. I hold in my hand the final question of the evening, all right? All right, so we begin.
I think it goes to me. I think it's me next, right?
I'm sorry?
I think the question goes, I think I start off next.
You do, you're right. Nick Reynolds, the question goes to you first, and that is, what is the biggest issue in this election that has not been adequately addressed?
Oh, boy.
There's not one.
I think we've covered it all.
Can you repeat the question just so I can buy myself more time to think about it?
Maybe we've done such a magnificent job, we've got every question in here already. What is the biggest issue in this election that has not been adequately addressed?
I think we've really hit on all the big topics, finances, which is inevitable, that we're going through right now at the fast-growing district. I think, that as much as I hate that the high school debate is still out there, I truly do not like that debate. I really don't, because I always said last year and this year I'll support what the community wants. I just want more information to make that decision. We've talked about, books. I mean, I really do truly believe that we've hit on almost every topic that is important in our district right now.
All right, thank you, Nick. Craig Hawkesworth, your response?
Yes, I think we have talked about a lot of things, but I would like to go a little deeper on policies. We saw a local district recently pull out of TASB. There's another local district that recently really changed their policies. And I think those are really important things for us to be considering and watching as a district, specifically as a board. TASB does provide services to this district, but there are options. And I'm not saying we need to change. I'm not saying we need to pull out. I'm saying we need to be cognizant. We need to be watching what's going on. And we need to be looking for ways to strengthen our policies outside of TASB that align with our community values. There are too many times, too many things that we get phone calls about as a board member I have to send them back to the campus administrators that do a great job, but there's too many calls coming about this book or this content or that lesson. This community has values, and that's what our district should be aligned with. That's what our policy should be aligned with.
Thank you, Craig.
And that's what we should do.
All right, same question for Tori Ryon.
I think one topic we haven't talked about is along the lines of public policies, and that's the ones for the Open Meetings Act. I think that we could use some greater transparency there to the community. We have unanimous decisions all the time. I don't know how they're arriving at those decisions. That seems odd to me for a school board to never have a dissenting opinion. The public would like to hear what the school board members think. They want to hear why they voted yes or no. I would have no problem being the only person that votes no. And I don't say that to be divisive, but I think a board needs to have some push and pull. It needs to have different perspectives. That's what the point of a board is. Otherwise, let's just have it governed by one person. So I think we could use some room for improvement in the transparency part and the communication to the public about why decisions are being made and how they arrived at them.
Thank you, Tori. Same question, Leigh and Artho.
Well, I'm going to kind of piggyback on everyone here. We have gone through a lot tonight. I agree with Craig about possibly looking at pulling out of TASB, strengthening a lot of our policies, and looking at the future as we transition to new ways of educating our children. Currently, I think there are 900 bills in the Texas Senate and Texas House strictly dealing with education. So there could be lots of changes coming our way. We need to be aware of what those are and have policies in place to maintain our values. As far as talking about the board and the Open Meetings Act, I think our board does a lot of their tough discussions behind closed doors, and I don't think they all agree on everything. I think that they want to come out and have a unified front, kind of like mom and dad don't argue in front of the kids, and I think it's out of respect for our district so that we don't make the local news. And just to answer Tori's question, I never said that one high school wasn't feasible. I said for me it's not desirable.
All right, thank you, Leanne. What we do now is we'll conclude the forum with closing statements, and we go in reverse order. Each candidate will have 1 minute for their closing statement. We begin with Nick Reynolds, please.
We're all up here because we have kids in the district. We're parents. We care. We're passionate. We love what we have here. We love what we moved here for. I wouldn't put myself through this 2 years in a row if this wasn't something I was passionate about. It's not that I'm passionate about overturning anything, or because I have some sort of agenda, or because I've got some wild, crazy scheme to do something extreme. That's not it. I genuinely am a dad. I'm a full-time dad. My wife works shift work as a nurse, so I'm home. I work. I'm home. I care for my kids. I still do my job, and I still am so passionate about this that I did it for a second year in a row. I said going into it this year I was going to run on 3 pillars. That's fiscal responsibility, which we've talked about. That's an unparalleled transparency, which Tori alluded to, and a unified Argyle. When I say unified Argyle, that does not mean necessarily one high school. It means a unified community, which is the reason that we moved here.
Thank you, Nick. Leanne, Artho, your 1 minute closing, please.
When you're looking between the two of us and you want to know who you want to vote for, Nick just said his 3 pillars are fiscal responsibility, transparency, and a unified Argyle. Argyle has been fiscally responsible. We have a great CFO. Everyone here has said it. Our administrators are some of the best. They're not going to do anything that's going to put our school in a bad financial position. They haven't done it in the past. They're not going to do it in the future. As far as transparency, we have a great director of communications. As our school district grows, our communications department will grow with it, and there will be better communication for our families. I do agree with him that unity comes from community, and that is what Argyle has always been about. But to look at what my platform is, it is about the student experience, giving the most opportunities to the most students, safeguarding our curriculum. It's not just what our kids are learning in the classrooms, but how they're learning it, and putting in policies and procedures that maintain our values and retain the wonderful educators and staff that are the backbone of our school district.
Thank you, Leanne. Tori Ryon, your 1 minute closing, please.
So my vision for the district is that we have a board that is accountable and transparent, and I'm not saying that that they aren't, I think we can improve on that. And I have to disagree with Leanne on the fact that they should be presented like mom and dad, a unified front. Yes, school board trustees should make every effort to get along and make decisions, but that's not the point of a board. We shouldn't have a situation where it's always the same answer from every single person. That means there's a sector of the community that's not being represented. That means we're not following the law, because the law says that we can't have 3, 4 or more board members talking at one time about an issue. That it should be discussed in private if it falls under an exception. Otherwise, it needs to be discussed in front of the public, and that is what the law says. I don't know what goes on in that room because I'm not in there, but I think that I could provide a valuable service of refereeing and moderating and saying, guys, this is a topic that is not on the agenda. We cannot talk about this unless we're in front of the public.
Thank you, Tori. Craig Hawkesworth, your 1-minute closing, please.
So a minute ago in one of the other answers, Tori used the word divisive. It seems to me like there are a handful of people whose goal is just that, is to be divisive in this community. In this election alone, there have been attacks on me, which I can take, but there have been attacks on my wife. There have been ethics violations filed against me. And I don't understand how we got to this place. This community has spent a lot of years building this place that people want to move to. If you have questions for me about anything I've done, and there's people in here that don't agree with me that I spent time with on the phone, you can call me. Call me anytime. I will answer any question you have. You don't have to attack anybody up here, because you know what? These people raise their hand. There's plenty of people that love to complain and don't raise their hand. Every one of these people raise their hand. They deserve your respect, and they deserve not to be attacked.
Thank you. If you would, folks, please give all the candidates a round of applause. Thank you. If you would, I'd also like to give our Boy Scout timekeeper, Quinn Kane of Troop 99, a hand. Thank you, Quinn. All right, Election Day is Saturday, May 6th. Early voting begins on Monday, April 24th, and ends on Tuesday, May 2nd. You can visit votedenton.gov or call 940-349-3200 for voting information. Please visit the Cross Timbers Gazette website at www.crosstimbersgazette.com for the latest Southern Denton County news updates daily. Local lives here. This concludes our program. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, Argyle ISD, and thank you all for attending. Good night.